Welcome on in, everybody. Here it is Thursday Night Live here at AU Club. Nathan King, joined by Jason Caldwell. We're back here in person this week. Looking forward to a great show. Back on location here at the Auburn University Club. Going to get into it tonight. Obviously, got Auburn traveling to Kentucky to end a 3-game road swing. Obviously, the Tigers are really looking to get that monkey off their back in this game after they came so close at Missouri. Auburn basketball also goes to Furman on Sunday for their exhibition opener. They'll play 2 exhibitions this preseason. To talk a little bit more about that, we talked to Bruce Pearl earlier today, previewing that matchup against Furman and talking about how Auburn is doing so far in preseason practice. So for our digital audience, we'll cut over to an interview with Bruce Pearl before we get back to the live show.
We'll go over there healthy with one exception. Miles Kelly has not practiced in about a week and a half due to some illness, and he's not injured, but he has some illness it's this kind of illness that just takes some time to recover from. I'm hopeful that we get Miles back next week, and he's obviously, Miles had a great preseason, and will be an important part of our team.
And Bruce, speaking of JP, just how have you seen his preseason go, and just him fitting in, being a point guard,
Yep.
In this system?
Yep. I thought JP had a really good summer. I thought he had a really good start to the fall, and then for about 2 or 3 weeks, he had the first bit of a struggle. And what I really like about it was the last 2 or 3 weeks he's been really on point. He's really been focused and worked his way through just the learning curve, continuing the learning curve of how we guard, what we play, trying to get an understanding of all the different positions. It's like trying to come in and play quarterback and just be a first-year guy playing quarterback. It's hard to be a first-year guy playing quarterback. It just is. You don't know the system. You've never played in the system. You don't know what works, what doesn't work. You don't know what adjustments are made, and so it's the hardest position to make that adjustment from in a short period of time. I think he's done a really good job with it. JP is, like a lot of my point guards, a really good scoring point guard. JP can score. He can really shoot the basketball. He can get downhill, makes pretty good plays, makes pretty good decisions. He's a smart player. He's a really solid defender. He's worked hard on his defense. One of the things that any player transitioning from mid-major to high major will tell you is the physicality, the speed, the athleticism at this level is just something you can't, really prepare for. It's a step up, and so dealing with all that is something he's dealt with all summer and all fall. And again, I think he's done a good job. We will play Denver. We will play JP, and we might even play Todd a little bit at that point guard position. But really pleased with JP. He's been a really good leader, and he does everything. One of our hardest workers. He does everything you ask him to do. Pretty good. He's a pretty good Auburn man for just being at Auburn. Just getting there.
Bruce, you mentioned after tip-off that you had some concerns and you were looking forward to seeing this team against somebody else. What are maybe some of those specific things that you've been concerned about? What do you want to see in this game?
I mean, whether or not we're going to be able to end possessions, with a rebound. I would say because we had a pretty good summer and a pretty good fall, it just seems like this has been it seemed like the longest time we've had. I can remember before we played. We needed a game about 2 weeks ago, and I've talked to a number of coaches, and they've all said the same thing. And it's amazing. Even these next 3 days, like I haven't even taught our under basket out of bounds defense, like how we press out of bounds. I haven't taught it yet. We haven't done it yet. Done it once. We may not even do it today. We may do it tomorrow for the first time. I haven't even taught how we might press on the side. I haven't even taught it yet. I have turnover, loose ball. I haven't even taught how to attack a 3-2 zone, which I found out today they might play a little bit of. So I got to do a couple things to be prepared for that. There are just a lot of things that we haven't put in yet. Now, all that we put in, It's a lot to remember for a lot of new guys. And then when you got guys that are playing two positions, like for example, my freshmen, both Ja'Kai Howard and Todd Pettiford are going to play two positions. I don't like to do that, but there have been a number of reasons why I'm doing it. Partly because they're both really talented. So Todd's going to play 1 and 2. That is hard because the 2 and the 3 are the same position, but they're on different sides of the floor. Ja'Kai Howard's going to play 2 and 3. That's a lot. And so when you're out there thinking before you're out there playing, you don't typically play as well when you have to think first. And that's just something that all freshmen, will go through.
Coach, speaking of the things that you put in, over the last season, we saw Janai add the three-pointer to his game. How does that affect what you put in, and will we continue to see him evolve there?
Yep. Janai's going to continue to be an inside-out player, both offensively and defensively. And we will have Janai and Dylan on the floor at the same time for periods of time during the course of the game. And that would be new from last year. We did it when Jalen Williams got hurt. We did it at Georgia. And so that'll be different for us this year. We're going to be a little bigger. But then if we do get bigger, are we going to be too slow, not quick enough, not fast enough to play the way we want to play?
Bruce, you were talking about the exhibitions and how much you like the NCAA allowing these now. You guys have obviously played D1 teams, behind closed doors, but what's the benefit of playing, more Division I teams like in these exhibitions publicly, getting a couple of them to start the season compared to in years past where you may play like a D2 team or something like that, in front of everybody?
Well, I mean, I would say that, like, one of the things I've made sure the guys do is circle Vermont. Like right now, circle Vermont. That's the one that counts. Now these games matter too. We're gonna keep score, and we'll see how we do. And I'm not gonna be experimenting. I'm gonna be doing everything I can to win these games. But Vermont's the one that counts. So if we don't play very well against Furman or Florida Atlantic, I won't be happy, won't be pleased. We'll work on things. Or if we play really well in these first couple games, don't get too excited about it because these don't count. We gotta keep growing. We gotta get better. We gotta ready for Vermont. Vermont's won their league like more than they've lost their league. Like they're gonna come in really, really good. And then of course Houston, and then Kent State. Don't get me going.
All right, last question, Hope.
Maybe Chaney, I guess what have you seen from him, and I guess has he reacted any to the potential of Dylan and Janai playing together? Like has that elevated him? Like I need to get back out there a little bit.
I think both Chaney and Turtle would be like, well, I wouldn't expect it necessarily for Janai to play a ton of 4, and I don't expect him to play a ton of 4, but he'll play some. And then Chaney and Jaheim, their job is to continue to play better and better and better so that the minutes that are at the 4 split between them and not a whole lot of Janai at the 4. Dylan's job is to play really well so that he and Janai play together. Janai and Dylan's job is to play well together so they can continue to play together. And that clearly is a work in progress. Chaney's challenge is to be as aggressive when he's out there with Auburn as he is when he's out there on the scout team. Like last week, which is a lot of fun for guys to get on the scout team. I try and take 2 or 3 scholarship guys and put them on scout teams. Last week was the last week of getting ready for somebody else. So we were working on North Carolina last week, and we had one of North Carolina's better players at force position. So I said, Chaney wants you to be that guy. Well, he played great. We couldn't guard him. We couldn't keep him out of lane. He was driving the ball to the basket. Nobody could stay in front of him. He was aggressive. And I'm like, nobody's saying that you can't do that when you're playing for Auburn. But when he's playing for Auburn, he's playing in a role, and he wants to be he wants to be able to do what he's supposed to do. Look, he's a terrific athlete, and getting him to use his athleticism, his size, his physicality, his motor running all the time. Sometimes his motor doesn't run. Sometimes he doesn't pressure the ball. Sometimes he doesn't run the lane. Sometimes he doesn't post up. Sometimes he plays not as aggressively as he should. And if he'll do that, he'll be even more effective.
Thanks, guys.
Welcome back in, everybody. It is Thursday Night Live here at AU Club. My name is Nathan King, here with Auburn Undercover. Jason Caldwell here with me as well. Excited to be back on location today. Our digital audience just heard that interview with Bruce Pearl. Auburn basketball heads to Furman on Sunday. They'll play 2 exhibitions this preseason, starting with that one there in Greenville, South Carolina. Jason, a really interesting game, if you will, for Auburn. And look, Bruce Pearl said it today. He doesn't coach these like they're exhibition games. They coach them, like they're going out there to win. Partially because we hear it from Bruce at this time every preseason, and he said it today. He said, "Look, if you guys replayed my press conference this time every year, I would say the exact same thing." His word is always exposed. He wants his team to go out there, and he wants them to have an opportunity to show some of the flaws that they've got. Basketball season will be here before we know it, and he wanted to take his team on the road per se, and give them an opportunity to show some of those flaws on Sunday.
Yeah, no, I think it's a big deal when you start talking about trying to get basketball going, trying to figure out who you are. And we just heard Bruce talking about Chaney Johnson and thinking about guys taking the next step. He's a guy that has to take the next step for this team. And I think you start looking at, he said, hey, he does great when he's playing with the other opponent. Can he be that guy now in an Auburn uniform? And I think that's one of the keys for this team. And Sunday's really the first chance to kind of see those things happen, because we've seen Chaney Johnson play, but it's always been as an addition to Jalen Williams. Now they want Chaney Johnson to be the guy. I mean, obviously Janai Broome can play the 4, and he can do those things, but it'd be great if Chaney Johnson said, hey, I don't need you. We're good. I can take this over myself. I can be that guy. And so I think when you start talking about that, can Chaney, to me, that's one of the biggest question marks for this team starting Sunday is what does that 4 position look like? And how much can you avoid having to play Broome maybe 18, 20 minutes there, knowing he's going to have to play the center too?
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see how much Janai plays the 4 spot for Auburn on Sunday. For Auburn fans obviously interested in this game, we'll see how much coverage we're able to get. We will definitely have it. I'm 99% sure there will be stats available after this game, but it's not on TV. It's not on radio, so we'll see from a live updates perspective what we're able to get. But Bruce Pearl said he wanted Furman back on the schedule per se. They were an exhibition team for them last year. Wanted them back on the schedule because they do such a good job as an offensive team. And obviously Auburn is so defense focused. Defense first for Bruce Pearl, wants to see where they're at there. Speaking of Furman, they saw J.P. Pegues this time last year, decided that they wanted to go get him once he was in the transfer portal. The point guard spot, I think in the offseason we sort of assumed you get a veteran guy like Pegues out of the portal. I think they sort of assumed, he's the guy. He'll run the show. And I think it's a combination of, Bruce Pearl admitted it today, maybe some ups and downs this offseason for J.P. Pegues trying to get acclimated to a new system. That, and I think Denver Jones has done a really good job at this spot. That point guard rotation is going to be really interesting to see how it fleshes out over the course of these couple exhibition games and into the season.
Yeah, no, those are the 2 spots. You think about the 2-3. Miles Kelly's a little under the weather. I think even if you play without him a little while, you've got guys at the 2 spot that you can play. You think about the 3 and you think about the 5. You think about those spots being in good shape. The 1 and the 4 are the question marks. And J.P. Pegues is a guy that you thought you would be able to plug in and do some of those things at the point guard position. And I still think he's going to be a guy that's going to play a lot there. But you've had Denver Jones there. You've had Tahad Pettiford there a little bit. And Bruce said, look, it's not ideal to have Tahad Pettiford and Jakai Howard both playing multiple spots this early. And you'd like for those guys to be able to settle into one role, kind of do their thing and move forward. But, they moved them around some. I think it'll pay dividends at the end of the year, but it might set them back early because you're having to do so many different things. And so, I think J.P. Pegues, we saw his hand wrapped up a little last week. Get him back healthy. I still think he's a classic true point guard for this team. Denver Jones is a little bit more, feels like more of a scoring threat point guard, and I think he can do things with both guys. So I would venture to guess that each of those guys will probably see 12 to 15 minutes at the point in some combination to see how they run things against Furman.
Yeah, you mentioned Miles Kelly. It'll be interesting to see what Auburn does without him in this game. But dealing with an illness that apparently is going around. He's been out for the last week and a half of practice, Bruce Pearl said. This is a guy that his teammates called him last week. They called him the best three-point shooter on the team, a Georgia Tech transfer that is absolutely going to impact this team. They hope to have him back for the FAU exhibition. That'll be next Friday. And so a little bit of Auburn basketball flavor here. for you at the start of the show. Jason, getting into the main event on Saturday, Auburn football travels to Kentucky. This is the third and final of their road trip here in October. They will finally come back home next week against Vanderbilt in November. Jason, I mean, we were there in Columbia, and we were talking about it with some folks before we got rolling today. It's sort of been a series of unfortunate events for this team, finding different ways to lose. And I think that's one comment that I kind of latched onto with Hugh Freeze this week. What difference tangibly can we see from them when you get your head coach saying, hey, I'm not coaching aggressively enough, we're not playing aggressively enough, we need to kind of put the foot on the throat, whether that ends up being something they can do in this game? I think probably it will, because it would be surprising to me if either of these teams won in a blowout. I think this would be another close game, a game that Auburn is very capable of winning, and technically, Jason, a bowl game is still on the table for them. You pretty much have to get it on Saturday if you want any hope of them doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you need this win. And both teams, this is a huge game for both teams when you look at Saturday and kind of that situation. Yeah, I mean, for Auburn offensively, you think back to going, hey, should you be more aggressive at the end of games? Is that kind of what you want to do? And, you look, and they were aggressive at the end of the Oklahoma game, and it didn't work out. Last week, you felt like you had the opportunities to be aggressive against Missouri. You didn't do it, and it didn't work out. And so it is one of those, you look at it, and there's kind of a stat out there that you look, and Auburn's one of the top teams in the country, one of the few teams that's averaging more than 6.5 yards per play on offense and giving up less than 5 on defense. And they're the only team that has a losing record. The rest of them are all in contention to be a playoff team.
Yeah, they're all pretty good.
And so you look, and that's how close it's been, but that's also the difference between making a few key plays. And once again, that was the case last week. You look at the Missouri game, and you go, there's probably 5 plays. And I kind of think back to Charles Kelly. And Charles Kelly, when you think about, he always has this thing where he talked about with Coach Dye. Said Coach Dye always told him there are 4 or 5 plays in the game that determine the outcome, but you don't know what those are until it's over with. And you thought about it, you're like, oh man, that the touchdown play to Robert Lewis, you go, you're still in good shape, you're still fine, but you don't score, and you miss a field goal, and all of a sudden that becomes a massively big play. It was first down. It wasn't a third down with a tie game, but it became a huge play in that game because you probably put it out of reach. Then you think about you got a team backed up, and you give up a third down conversion on the 22-yard line, and you start going, no, you still got 70 yards of field to cover. You'll get a stop before you get there, and you don't. And so that's the thing for this team right now, is that it continues to be one play here or there, and they haven't been able to make the key play or the key stop, even though they played pretty well for the majority of the 60 minutes.
Yeah. Between the 20s is kind of the way that this team operates right now. I think especially on offense, I think this is a team that from one side of the field to the other is doing a decent job of moving the ball down the field. But Jason, we saw it against Missouri, something they absolutely have to do in this game. Perform better when they have those scoring opportunities. I mean, it was, you and I talked about it after the game, they had the ball at Missouri's 19-yard line, 44-yard line, 37-yard line. There was another one as well. Only got 3 points out of all of those scoring opportunities.
Well, you were at the 10.
At the 10, at the 10-yard line. That was the other one, first and goal. Arguably your best scoring opportunity in that game. And so, again, finding creative ways to lose games is obviously not where Auburn wants to be right now. But, Jason, I feel like we're saying the same thing every week. But for Auburn, I think you can sort of latch on to the fact that, and you were there on Tuesday as well talking to players, this is not a team that, I think Freeze talked about it this week, Tiger Talk, saying confidence is a real thing. You got to make sure you don't lose your team at this point in the season. I personally, and you've been doing it longer than I have, but I've been around some teams. This does not strike me as a team that is lost at this point. It does not strike me as a team that's giving up at this point in the season. I think they've got good leadership on the squad, and they understand, just like we're talking about right now, and they actually understand it better than we do, how close they are to getting one of these wins.
No, I think you look at it, and the confidence is still there, because you talk to these players, and they say, look, we know how close we are. We've been talking about that for the last few weeks, in that there's a segment of the fan base that has kind of made this season feel like it's 2008 or 2012, and that's not the case. because those teams were not in games. In 2012, they were for a little while, but not at the end of the year. This team has continued to play. They've continued to give themselves opportunities to win games. And right now, you just have to figure out a way to do that. And so, yeah, I think these guys understand it. And I thought one of the biggest things we heard this week was from Jay Crawford when he was asked about what's your message to the kids that are committed, to the guys that are coming in this 2025 class. And he said, just hold on. Just hold on because it's coming. I think to a person, especially from this young group, even the older guys, we talked to Luke Deal and these guys, and they say, look, this thing's getting close. It's getting close to turn around. I know that doesn't help anybody when you're 2-5, and hey, we've said it. This team shouldn't be 2-5. For all the things that have gone wrong and all the things that they still need to improve, I still don't. You look at it, you should have won some games, but they haven't. And so now what can you do? You either quit or you keep going. And I don't see any quit in these guys, so I think they'll keep going. And you're right, Saturday is a great opportunity for them, but it's going to be also a slugfest. This is going to be an old school, probably a lower scoring game.
Yeah, we can get into talking about Kentucky and previewing this game. Look, there was a reason, and you mentioned the fact that Auburn is still doing decent things on both sides of the ball. Look, they closed at around a 4-point underdog last week to a ranked team on the road. I think that now, and Missouri hadn't been stellar either, but sitting at around a 2.5-point underdog against Kentucky. And as Christian brought up this week, I mean, that basically just means you're almost at a toss-up kind of perspective because you always kind of give that lead.
And that's what this game probably should be.
It should be. And Kentucky has really struggled at home. The statistic to go to is they're 2-10 in their last 12 home SEC games under Mark Stoops. Kentucky is a team that we talked about in the offseason, Jason. I know you're potentially a little bit vindicated here because the Mark Stoops situation at Kentucky has really been on the decline relative to where he brought them up to for the better part of the last 3 years. Yeah. If they lose 6 games this year, it'll be their 3rd straight season losing at least 6 games. So, if you're getting into looking at Kentucky, if you're an Auburn fan, this is not the same team from a few years ago. But as we'll talk about, Jason, defensively is where they're closer. And it's one of the reasons this should be a slugfest. Kentucky's got some NFL players on defense. Deion Walker could be a first-round pick. If you see big number 0, the nose tackle for Kentucky, on your screen, that's the guy who's going to try to wreak havoc there on Auburn's offensive line, going against an inconsistent Auburn offense. Talk to me a little bit, Jason, about what this Kentucky defense brings to the table, because it is far and away. I think Auburn kind of close offensively and defensively.
Yeah.
They're maybe in terms of their performance this year, the defense I think has been a little better. Kentucky's defense far and away the better side of the ball.
Yeah. Kentucky I think has only gone over 350 yards one time this season, and that was against Ohio.
Yeah.
So offensively they have not moved the football. They're averaging 167 yards passing a game, which was in this day and age it's pretty hard to be that way. But defensively, last week was really the one outlier for them. They gave up 460-plus yards to Florida last week.
And a backup quarterback.
But 250 to Georgia, 283 to I think Vanderbilt, only 353 to Ole Miss, and that was Ole Miss in Oxford. And so you start thinking about what they've done defensively, and this has been a team that has been really good defensively. Size, I talked about it, like the interior of their defensive line is 345 and 355, I think. Their 2 linebackers are 250 each, 6'3" corner, and a guy that I've been watching for probably now the last 4 or 5 years, J.Q. Hardaway. First saw him at Hardaway High School. He was in Columbus, transferred to Central Phoenix City for his senior year, started his career at Cincinnati, and now he's at Kentucky. And this is a 6'3" corner outside, so this is a big guy. So this is a big physical defense for Auburn. I still think there's going to be some opportunities. They don't rush the passer great. They have 15 total sacks, but a lot of tackles for losses. And I would expect them to come really heavy, run blitz, try to create pressure, and a lot of movement. We've seen Auburn struggle with movement the last couple of weeks against defensive lines, kind of stemming and doing some of those things. If I'm Kentucky, I'm doing the same thing. And so how Auburn's offensive line handles that big front for Kentucky is going to be a big deal.
Yeah, sticking on the offensive line for a little bit, that'll be such a huge part of this game. For Auburn to try to match up with an some NFL caliber talent for Kentucky. Jason, we'll see what this offensive line looks like. We saw a very swift change at Missouri. Percy Lewis was in there at left tackle for 3 plays, and Hugh Freeze had basically seen enough. They insert Dylan Wade, or they move Dylan Wade over, insert Braden Joyner there into the guard spot. But some intriguing trends for that group early this week at practice. The true freshman DeAndre Carter, who's built like a house. We've seen some strides for him this season. And Hugh Freeze talked about it yesterday on the teleconference, saying he got some first-team reps at practice, whether that's at left guard, whether that's at right guard. We'll have to see. E.J. Harris was also a guy you saw in there a little bit at the first team. I'm not sure whether this is going to all of a sudden be a different offensive line against Kentucky, but Hugh Freeze said it. You're at the point in the year where you can't be, hesitant. We don't want to pull this guy out. No, if you think it's the best thing that's going to help you succeed in offense and win a football game, you want to go out there and do it. If they think DeAndre Carter can hold up against the size of Kentucky, they're going to give him some opportunities.
Yeah, here's what it looks like now. The goal on the offensive line is always to find your best 5 guys. And right now, Dylan Wade at left tackle is one of your best 5 guys. Braden Joyner at left guard. I do think right now we're getting to the point where if something were to happen to Jeremiah Wright, who's a little banged up this time of year, it's hard on offensive linemen, and you were to say, look, we need another offensive lineman, I do think before you move Dylan Wade back to guard, you would keep Dylan Wade now at tackle and go DeAndre Carter or E.J. Harris. I think that combination has moved in front of Percy Lewis. I think they've seen Percy Lewis and go, look, we can't keep doing that. It's become a liability at left tackle and against the pass rush. Keep Dylan Wade out there. Go inside, bigger physical guys at guard. So it feels like that Dylan Wade's probably back at home at left tackle unless we see some more Tyler Johnson here down the stretch. But I don't think you want to do that on the road. That's the thing you look at. We could see DeAndre Carter this weekend, but I think it's probably only in an emergency situation. If Jeremiah Wright were to get banged up, then you go DeAndre Carter. If not, you probably stick with that top group.
Yeah, and offensively for Auburn, we talked to Cam Coleman this week. It's been an up and down season for him. Good to see him get in the end zone against Missouri. Good to pick his brain as well, Jason. I think there's sort of this, try to find the right way to phrase it. There's going to be, I think, a little bit of nerves for Auburn fans when you have, one of your top players maybe have a season not go the way you wanted, which is funny to say because he's the number 3 receiver on the team. Yeah. It's not like he's had a bad year, but you kind of want to get the head space of one of the top young talents on your team. Particularly, Jason, as we just talked about, how impressive this freshman class is, how important their message is to the future. Jay Crawford talked about it. Malik Blockton, I thought, was awesome on Tuesday, talking about sticking together. He was like, "Hey man, I'm not going anywhere." He's going to see this thing through. Cam Coleman, I think, really those inconsistencies for him at the beginning of the year compounded with his injury. Seeing him get into the end zone, and Hugh Freeze said it. I thought it was interesting that Cam Coleman came back and said the biggest thing he wants to work on is his route running, because Freeze had just said a few days prior, hey, we want to see him get better at that intermediate stuff. He would have actually had more opportunities in this game if he had run the correct routes or run better routes. And so we continue to say it every week, but Cam Coleman, 11, Malcolm Simmons, he was great against Missouri. Yep. These young receivers continue to give a spark. Can Perry Thompson get involved? It's a decent Kentucky secondary there, but I would be surprised if we don't see more opportunities for Cam Coleman, just like we saw on Saturday against Missouri, and like Freeze talked about, they could have gotten him the ball a little bit more, but he's got to go out there and he's got to continue to develop this season. Yeah,
I think we'll see more of what we saw a little bit earlier in the year. Earlier in the year, they forced it probably too much to Cam Coleman in one-on-one situations.
Yeah.
And now I think you've dialed it back to where you're not probably doing it enough. I think there's a happy medium. You don't need 18 targets like Ryan Williams got for Alabama against Tennessee. But I think you look back and you go, there's probably 3 or 4 at least other opportunities Saturday for Cam Coleman where you go, look, we need to take a shot right here because he's one of your biggest playmakers. And quite honestly, like Saturday, Missouri, even though they didn't give up the RPO, they did a good job of saying, look, we're not going to let Jarquez Hunter rip off the big 20, 25-yard runs. So 19 carries for 57 yards. It was tough sledding against that Missouri defense. Kentucky's going to be pretty physical up front as well. I think then you look for opportunities, and Hugh Freeze he alluded to it a little bit this week about being more aggressive. We've talked about it all year. This is an offense that is a numbers game. It's a numbers game where you get to the line of scrimmage and you're going, look, if there's 7 or 8 guys up there, you can't run it. You got to be able to throw it. And I thought last week they decided, you know what, I don't care. We're going to run the football. Here we are, and they didn't do it well. And so I think you go back to being who you are, and I think that was kind of the message a little bit, going, look, we've got to be who we are, which is when the numbers tell you to throw it, you got to throw it. When the numbers tell you to run it, run it. Now, if it's 3rd and 1 or if it's 4th and goal, and there's situations where you go, it doesn't matter, just run the football. But I think out there on 1st down, say, hey, look, I know we're in a good spot here, but if the numbers tell you to throw it and you got a guy in one-on-one situations, that's just the way this offense has to perform and has to be run. And so I think they get back to being a little bit more aggressive against Kentucky.
On the other side of the ball, Jason, a name that people will remember from the recruiting days. Brock Vandegrift is now the quarterback for Kentucky, the Georgia transfer, an Auburn kid, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, he grew up an Auburn fan. Auburn recruited for a while. Obviously went to Prince Avenue, which is right down the street from Georgia. So he signed with Georgia. Never really moved up beyond the number 3 quarterback for them. Went to Kentucky for his opportunity. He's had his opportunity, but he just hasn't played very well.
Yeah, I mean, he was instrumental. He's capable of doing it. A former, probably top 100. I don't think
really,
he's 5-star.
Really physically talented.
Yeah, physically talented, big, strong arm. He's capable of doing it. He was very instrumental in their win at Ole Miss. He didn't have a turnover in that game. He had like 250 yards. Their running game actually kind of struggled against Ole Miss, and he was able to pull them out of it a little bit. But Jason, some of the Auburn players talked about it this week. Almost their excitement level, Malik Blockton in particular, the freshman D lineman, to go against a team that wants to just run the ball. They haven't seen Oklahoma did it, but Oklahoma was in kind of a gimmicky, strange spot with Michael Hawkins, and they didn't do it well either. Georgia I was looking back at these stats today, they kind of warmed down over the course of the game.
They ran it at the end of the game.
And their average wasn't very good. Auburn's yards per carry average right now is top 35.
You really had a couple of runs really for Georgia, the end of the first half run. Right. There are really only a couple of those. Yeah, there hasn't been anybody they played this year that you go, okay, you got to line up and run the football. There just haven't been that team. So it's an opportunity for those big guys up front.
Yeah, and I think, and the flip side of that, talking to Keldrick Falk, is they feel like their pass rush, and sacks is one thing. I don't think they're incredible sack numbers this year, but Falk continues to be one of the better pass rushers in the country. Jalen McLeod was fantastic at Missouri. They feel like if they put Kentucky in a position where they have to throw the ball on 3rd down, put it in the air more often. Kentucky's leading rusher, we'll see what the SEC availability report looks like for tonight. He is questionable for this game, and so, like you mentioned, Jason, their best offensive lineman probably won't go in this game. So another element of this game on Saturday night, it's going to be kind of chilly. It's going to be a late game. It's going to be a slugfest on both sides. Another element of that is the fact that Kentucky's just going to want to run the ball. And the stat, Jason, as well, that I looked at today, 5 SEC games, Brock Vandegrift on 3rd down. 13 of 33, I believe that's sub 40% for like 4 yards an attempt. Auburn thinks if they can get them in that situation, it goes for any game, hey, stay out of 3rd and short. But this is really one where if Auburn can stop the run, which they've done a pretty good job at, I think that could help them dictate the flow of this game.
This Auburn defense has gotten people in 3rd and long situations a pretty good bit. They just haven't been able to get off the field in those spots. And so it is weakness versus weakness if you see that this week. I do think this is an Auburn defense that you can be a little bit more aggressive against Kentucky, but outside, they got a couple of guys that can really play. Dane Key and Barian Brown are two. There may be 2 NFL-type wide receivers. They just haven't gotten the ball to a bunch. Barian Brown has 6 kickoff returns for a touchdown. So for old-school Auburn fans, this is like Alexander Wright-type guy. I mean, he can fly. He is really fast. Doesn't have a ton of catches, but he led him in catches last year, I think, with 46. So he has the ability. So they've got a couple of guys that can go make plays, but they're the only 2 wide receivers they have with double-digit catches. So the running back's been the other 3rd guy, and he's questionable for this week. And getting back to Auburn and rushing the passer, they're tied for 17th nationally in quarterback sacks, which is not bad. But tied with Clemson, tied with Ohio State, and 1 more than Missouri, who's pretty good. 2 more than Tennessee. When you think about Tennessee's defense and all the talk they've got about them rushing the passer, Auburn's got 2 more sacks than Tennessee does, 3 more than Penn State. So they've done a pretty good job, but it's really been 2 guys. It's really been Keldrick Falk and Jalen McLeod that have done it. We heard Hugh Freeze, something else to maybe watch for. We heard Hugh Freeze talking about potentially on 3rd down, trying to spell some guys a little bit to make sure they're fresh.
Yep.
And they have done that in the middle, but we haven't seen the edge guys as much. Maybe we see a little bit more of Morris Williams now to rush the passer and give Keldrick a little bit of a break, maybe in the 2nd quarter, to go, hey, let's make sure that guy's ready to go in the 4th quarter. So could see some more of those young guys, a few more snaps to try to get you a little bit fresher legs, especially on some third downs.
Yeah, Morris Williams last week against Missouri, the most snaps for him against a Power 4 opponent this year is the most snaps he played against anybody since Alabama A&M, so you started to see that role. DeMarcus Riddick continues to be a guy that is absolutely involved here. He was more involved, he has been the last couple of weeks, at that inside linebacker spot. They like him as almost alongside Austin Keys as that third guy, him kind of splitting time there. So, I mean, he mentioned by name TJ Lindsey and DJ Reed. He was like, why not maybe give these guys an opportunity? It'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, TJ Lindsey traveled. I mean, so he was in Missouri, so he's taken some steps to try to get into the mix. And I do think it's a situation, and I thought about this some this week. It's a fine line. You have to be really careful as a coach in this situation to say, look, we're not just going to go full bore and play all our freshmen, because then you have the ability to lose a team, some older guys. But if you're playing guys that people go, hey, man, that guy's been really good in practice, he probably deserves some playing time. You're not replacing starters. We're like, look, hey, this guy can give us we've seen that from these other spots, whether it's been Malik Blocked and now DeMarcus Riddick adding in. Now maybe it's a TJ Lindsey. So we've seen that to where you can start going, okay, mix some of those newcomers in, mix some of the young guys in a little bit more, and your older guys are going, okay, yeah, I see that. If you start going, hey, look, we're just pulling the plug, when you pull the plug, it is a very dangerous situation. People are like, oh, just play all the young guys. Well, yeah, that's fine and dandy, but you don't have enough of those guys to go win a game. I mean, there's not 50 of them. And so I think you have to be careful. I think they've done a good job of managing this freshman group so far.
I think so. I mean, you look at the snaps played statistics for them. Now it's kind of seeping over to both sides of the ball, but particularly on defense. The fact that Kensley Ledore-Faustin is your number 3 corner at this point. I mean, 2
of your top 3 corners are true freshmen.
Exactly, and they've not been bad.
No, they've been pretty good. Caleb Harris at safety, DeMarcus Riddick, Malik Blockton. So you look at those guys. Then Amaris Williams. I mean, that's 5 or 6 true freshmen on defense that have played well for this team. And obviously, you look at the wide receiver group. Now DeAndre Carter could be in the mix on the offensive line. This group is helping them, and they're not playing them just go, oh, let's just play them for next year. They're playing them because they're making this team better.
Yep.
That's what you look for out of a freshman class.
Yeah, and I think it sends a nice message, like we talked about what Jay Crawford said before. It sends a nice message to 2025 about having an opportunity to come in and play. Number one, because the team is 2-5 and you need them. You need them to help out. Yeah. Obviously, Auburn needs to be a better football team, but I mean, Charles Kelly talked about it on the bye week a couple weeks ago. Their job is to play the best players, and they've had no hesitation about doing that so far. Jason, we get into some recruiting stuff to close out here in a second, but give me a couple keys for this game. If you and I are at Kroger Field on the post-game podcast talking about an Auburn win late Saturday night, what are a couple big reasons for that?
Yeah, I think we've seen ultimately this season, and it's kind of cliche, but I think when you see 2 teams that are very similar and kind of how the seasons have gone, turnover battle is going to be massive. It's always important. It's been really big for this team no matter what. I think this is one where this Auburn defense is getting a little bit better at creating some. The couple last week, can you put Brock Vandegrift in some of those situations and create a turnover? This team could really use a short field. We saw the punt and touchdown. That was a big one. Can you get a short field or 2 from a turnover and give your offense a scoring opportunity? That would be huge. So I think that's the first thing. Then the other one is running game. I don't think there's any question this week. Whichever team and whichever defense can dictate the other offense, and you start going, boy, we were in 3rd and 6 or 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8 all day long instead of 3rd and 2 or 3rd and 3.
Yeah.
Neither one of these offenses is designed against this type of defense to go out there and win a bunch of those. So that's 2 things I would really look for.
Yeah, and neither team has had the quarterback play so far that's been able to get them out of those situations. Offensive line has been shaky, obviously, on both sides as well. So Auburn and Kentucky on Saturday night, 6:45 Central Time. They're at Kroger Field. Their first time going to Lexington since 2015 Thursday night game, which was probably bizarre for you guys.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember it's bizarre because Auburn and Kentucky don't normally play, and so it's a bizarre situation to go to Kentucky. I remember early on, I remember the first time I went, Tristan Davis had a kickoff return in the mid-2005 maybe, and in 2010, Cam had one of his signature games. Auburn led big early. Kentucky comes back, and Auburn has to drive down the field and kick a field goal late to win the game. And so yeah, there's just not a lot of those Kentucky-Auburn games that you think about. And so it's a really good field. Kroger Field, they've done a good job of facilities. When you think about Kentucky, people might not think in football terms of Kentucky having money, and they do. They got some money in football. They got some money in all these other sports. They just built a brand new baseball stadium. And so they've done a good job of trying to compete at this level, and obviously it's a big game for them coming up Saturday night.
Yeah, I mean, they evidenced, like you said, about the fact they haven't played very much. They've only played 19 times since 1966. Auburn's won 18 of those games. I mean, they have absolutely dominated the series.
Randall Cobb's really the only one.
Yeah, it was 2009.
Yep.
And they haven't lost. Auburn hasn't lost in Lexington. And again, to your point, haven't played that much. 1966 was the last time.
I'm trying to think. I think there was a game in 1988 where they played up there. I remember maybe 88. Bo had a game there in 83 where he ran through about 10 or 12 guys, where one of the greatest runs he had. Other than that, there just haven't been that many opportunities in my lifetime that Auburn's played at Kentucky.
Yeah, obviously Auburn extending that series dominance would be massive for them this weekend to try to get back on the right track going into November. Jason, before we close out, not a lot of individual recruiting news to get to right now because obviously going into a bye week, but the Alabama-Mississippi All-Star game, those rosters came out this week. Jason, plenty of Auburn flavor on that one this year.
I'm pretty sure that it's never happened before, but Auburn has 11 current commitments that are scheduled to play in the Alabama-Mississippi All-Star game. There's probably been the years where there were 6 or 7 guys. I don't ever remember double-digit guys. 10 of those from the state of Alabama, obviously Deuce Knight from Mississippi. But you look at the Alabama group, and Alvin Henderson, running back from Elba High School, and Alvin Henderson is on the cusp of history, 264 yards away from 10,000 rushing yards. That would make him only the 7th high school running back nationally ever to get 10,000 yards. So this is it's a great deal for Alvin Henderson. He's on this team, and he'll be a guy that'll be fun to watch, I think, in that environment. Derek Smith, wide receiver from Southside Selma, really talented player, is a guy that's in the game. Go down the list. Spencer Dolan, the Athens offensive lineman, a big kid that's been committed to Auburn for a long time, 6'6", 290, in the game as well. Antonio Coleman, Sarah Land, defensive lineman. And I'm getting ready to run down it. You look at the job that they've done recruiting on the defensive line. I'm getting ready to run down a list, and this is going to be kind of on repeat. But you look at Antonio Coleman, Sarah Land High School, Jordan Crawford from Parker High School, Jared Smith from Thompson High School, Malik Autry from Opelika High School, Jacayla Falk is an outside linebacker, Keldrick Falk's younger brother from Highland Home. Those are all front 7 guys that will be playing in this game, and all guys that can really play. Eric Winters, Anquan Fagans, a couple of safety commitments. Eric Winters from Enterprise, Anquan Fagans from Thompson. And then there's a couple of really big targets, including one really big one, Naeem Alford, Jordan Crawford's teammate from Parker High School, five-star corner, really athletic kid. So it's going to be a fun time to see how this game kind of shakes out. Is December 14th. It's in Mobile this year, so me and Christian don't have to make the trip across the border to Hattiesburg again like we did last year. But in Mobile, December 14th on South Alabama campus at Hancock Whitney Stadium, so it should be a good time.
Jason, as always, close us out here talking about AU Club. We're glad to be back in person this week. Another great night, people flowing in. I haven't had dinner yet. It smells really good, as it does every week. Jason, talk to the fine people and the digital audience about what they can get with a membership.
Yeah, I mean, I love it. I mean, obviously, I live right down the road, get a chance to come here. The golf course is immaculate. This is going to be a place, too, that once again in the spring is going to host an NCAA regional for the 2nd year in a row. So you get a chance to play where future pros play, and defending national champions, women's team is right there again. Get an opportunity to play where they play and train where they train. You have a fitness center right outside the clubhouse here. Restaurant's incredible. The wings, every time I come, it's hard for me to get anything else, but everything's good. So lots of things to go with. Obviously, the pool time is winding down, even though it's supposed to be in the upper 80s again the next couple of days. Pool, a fitness center, restaurant, golf course is incredible. So come check out AU Club if you get in town, and let them hook you up.
Thank you so much, as always, AU Club for sponsoring the show today, and thank you so much, everybody, on our YouTube channel for tuning in to Thursday Night Live. We will catch you guys next week. I guess on Halloween we'll decide what we want to do. Jason, I hope you got your costume picked out for that show. For Jason Caldwell, I'm Nathan King. Auburn at Kentucky on Saturday. We'll talk to y'all then at auburnundercover.com.